Welcome, Ava, to the Female VC Lab podcast. In one line, can you give me your name, your title, and the name of your fund?
Eva Yazhari, General Partner of Beyond Capital Ventures.
Thank you. So, what inspired you to become a VC or an investor?
I have a very quantitative mind. I started on Wall Street, and around the time of the start of the great financial crisis, decided to think differently about how to use my due diligence skills.
Hmm.
And my family has a history of working in Africa, building
Oh, cool.
a hospital, and not physically building, but establishing a hospital. My grandfather was a medical doctor living in Tanzania with his very big and growing family. And I thought a lot about some of the challenges faced by developing countries and lacking access to basic goods and services, but met by technology and innovation,
Hmm.
and decided to become a venture investor to invest in early stage businesses that are providing the next wave of innovations around access to basic goods and services.
Wow, that's pretty great. So, what is your thesis and what is the motivation behind your thesis?
Yeah, the motivation is super critical to what we do. At Beyond Capital Ventures, we invest in seed and Series A. We're actually transitioning from Fund 1 to Fund 2, where we will
Oh,
add in
congratulations.
Series A, yes, for mid the raise. I'm sure anybody listening who's a venture partner can understand
Rolling the
that
mill.
heavy lift.
Mm.
And so what we do is we invest in conscious leaders, and that is an underlying factor of our work that is extremely critical to what we do. We're not looking for the next technology. We're not looking for even the next unicorn. We're looking for leaders that believe in all stakeholders and the value that all stakeholders bring to the table in their businesses. And so a couple examples are in the former portfolio, Kasha, a women's health e-commerce platform in Rwanda and Kenya,
Mhm.
Frontier Markets in India, which employs women in distributing renewable products, consumer durables, and fast moving consumer goods into the deepest rural tentacles of that country. And the conscious leadership strategy is really at the core of our work. But then as we zoom out, we are a seed stage fund, very committed to seed stage, and our countries of focus are India, Kenya, Tanzania, Rwanda, and Uganda.
Okay.
And we invest in 5 sectors: healthcare, energy access, agriculture, financial inclusion, and waste and sanitation, with 3 impact themes: gender, distribution, and livelihoods.
Oh, that's good. That's good. I like that. So our fund does gender as well. We like gender balanced. We also do living wage. So we also like when you try and close that wealth and poverty gap. So that's
Absolutely.
very important,
Our fund is aligned to the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And one
as
of
are
the,
ours.
yeah, exactly. So we're speaking that same language.
Yeah, six.
And
Ours are six. We align with 6 of the 17 goals. With
yes,
facts.
all of our portfolio companies, because we have a multi sector approach, align with at least 3. And one of
Okay.
those is zero poverty.
Yeah, zero poverty. That's a good goal. It'll be interesting to see how that gets disrupted moving forward.
Couldn't agree more.
So when you say conscious leader, what is your definition of that for you?
Yeah, so I think it's important to understand the concept of servant leadership, where a
Hmm.
leader understands that contributing beyond herself and serving those around her will help her be successful and help the company be successful. And we view conscious leadership as servant leadership with a focus on all stakeholders, because there are aspects of being a conscious leader that require a leader to serve and also think about themselves and maintaining their ability to contribute beyond themselves. Put more concretely, stakeholder capitalism is the focus on customers, employees, the environment, the community around you, even the
Hmm.
governments in the areas where you're operating, and also your shareholders. And
Right.
so a conscious leader is thinking about all of those stakeholders in all decisions and finding a win-win or a win if it can be social and environmental impact in addition to profit as well.
I'm glad you defined that. I just wanted to make sure that was clear for everybody. So, what are you currently listening to or learning or reading these days?
I love podcasts, and it really runs the gamut on the podcasts that I listen to, but I listen to the Second Life podcast with
Mm.
female entrepreneurs who are on their second career essentially.
Hmm.
I also love Leadership Next by Fortune because it
Hmm.
is focused on conscious leadership, having purpose-driven business elevated to the norm, which I think is critical because it is not new. There are many
Yeah.
entrepreneurs out there that have been working for decades bringing their values into their work. I'm also reading 2 books, The 15 Commitments of Conscious Leadership, A New Paradigm for Sustainable Success.
Hmm.
And I am about to pick up an Audible Cast by Isabel Wilkerson, which I think is important as an American to understand the history of institutionalized racism and the I think most important topic of 2020.
What besides the global pandemic? Yes. Top
Besides
two.
global health,
Top
well,
two. Health
I
and
agree.
yes.
There is so much intersectionality though,
Yes, agreed.
and I think
Like
that,
where you rank those, they're both up there.
yeah, I think the public health system certainly is not as robust as it should be in
No,
Africa.
obviously.
Yeah, in Africa, we actually saw initially during the first wave of COVID, we saw some resilience because there is a super strong public health system down to
Mhm.
the village level. And it's one of the ways that babies get born and people get referred to clinics by having somebody in their local community who is able to point them in the right direction and give them the right information. But I do think systemic inequalities and a biased, I would call it financial system, but just a biased
Yes,
system in
in general.
general
Mm.
has held us back for many more decades and centuries than simply COVID-19. I would actually put it at number
I would
one.
say historically, yes. I agree with that. 100%.
Right. Yeah.
So in 2 years, if we're talking again in 2 years, and I go, hey, Eva, how do you see venture capital or investing having evolved in our conversation 2 years from now?
I think purpose will be a meaningful quality in a company. It
Mhm.
won't just be financial bottom line. It will be
Mm.
a social bottom line or an environmental bottom line or both in the same business. But I believe that venture investors and investors at large will look for more than just financial return and markers of that in their due diligence. So I'm really fascinated to see how due diligence evolves.
Yeah,
And then
that'll
I
be
think in two
interesting to see.
years, the conversation will be more robust. Now, what I'm not sure will change, quite honestly, is underrepresented groups being on equal footing as fund man.
Maybe not in 2 years, but it's not
Exactly.
like an
As
effort isn't
as
going on.
no, of course. I just, especially when it comes to female fund managers, I feel like there's some really like in the household kind of challenges that need to be
Hmm.
addressed in order to get women to be more a percentage of the GP population.
Yes and no. I think I agree and I don't agree at the same time. I was running a company and I had a baby. It's just a part of what we do as women. And I did have a lot of familiar support. So that was helpful. So
Right.
you do need a support system. I'm not 100%
Yeah.
naive on that. But I also think we need to make sure if we're making unicorn women, that
Mm.
they understand if they want to be in a fund or contribute to a fund or become a GP, that those are options as well,
Yes. Yes.
to giving back to those people that gave you an opportunity. Now you can give back to the next generation or the next set of people.
Absolutely. I'm really looking forward to being able to do that more.
Yeah, I think as female venture capitalists, I think that's a part of what we should be doing. And
Absolutely.
as far as a conscious leader, as far as a stakeholder, like that has to be in our kind of thinking and creation of the new ecosystem. We can't ignore that part of it. It's the other half
Right.
of it. I'm like, we got to get the first half done, but then we have to be mindful, like, there's this other half that has to happen as well.
Sure. Absolutely.
So, how do people get in touch with you?
There are a couple ways. First, always available on social channels,
Awesome.
LinkedIn, checking all of that very regularly. My Instagram is Conscious Investor. We have created a brand around our venture fund where we also have a podcast and an online magazine. The online magazine, I would really encourage those who are curious about impact investing to take a look as well. But I
Cool.
check all my messages. So that's a very easy place to find me on LinkedIn or Instagram, probably more so on LinkedIn, to be honest.
LinkedIn, all of our favorite things.
Yes.
All right, Eva. Thanks so much, Eva, from Beyond Capital Fund, for being
Thank
our
you.
guest on the Female VC Lab podcast.
Thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure to speak with you this evening.
Thank you so much.